Hey there everyone, LoneWolf360 here, back again for another video. Now, a couple of months ago, I remember coming across a few video essays titled One Villainous Moment, to where some people would talk about certain films which they really enjoyed, and would talk about certain moments where the villain really stood out and where it was kind of inspiring in a way. And there I was sitting there going like, okay, so I want to make another video talking about a horror game or something gaming related that has a horror element to it. Because I've already talked about Dead Space, so I really have no idea about what else to talk about, and I was like, wait a minute, what if I made a twist on One Villainous Moment and talked about one moment that was just like a fucking horror game within a superhero game? And yeah, that's... Shut the fuck up! So, now that I'm done with my little distraction that I had to go deal with a moment ago, how about we actually get back into the video? So Spider-Man Enter Time starts off with a pretty grim and ominous opening, as we see our boy Peter Parker get his ass beat into a pulp, only to have Spider-Man 2099, his future counterpart, carry his supposed corpse. And I feel like the thing that makes this opening so perfect not only has to be the visuals of this very ominous looking room, but also just the music as well, in which I'll be silent just so you can hear it and see it within its full effect. Now, from my little demonstration that I just showed there, this, folks, is how you open up a fucking video game. Because it tells you everything that it needs to tell you. It tells you that it's a pretty grim game, it tells you about time travel, and it tells you about how, despite it being grim, how there's like a little bit of hope in there. Not a lot, but just a little bit, like a small fraction. But, of course, let me stop talking and obsessing over the intro when I can actually talk about the gameplay. So the game starts off pretty simple, with us having the same intro that we just had, but us being able to actually play. To where we're playing as Peter Parker trying to stall for enough time for Miguel O'Hara, which is Spider-Man 2099, to come save us. And there we are fighting against Anti-Venom, which basically serves as a combat tutorial, teaching us the ropes about how to play the game and whatnots. But then, like most combat tutorials, this isn't the type of fight that you win because, well, just like in the intro, Spider-Man gets disoriented and eventually loses, only to flash back to a couple of hours before the very events of this game began. So to make a long story short, Miguel explains to us that he works at this one place called Alchemax, but then there's this one person that works there which is kind of sus, mainly due to where he kind of just popped out of nowhere, started climbing the corporate ranks, and then manages to somehow start working on time travel. But because Spider-Man isn't really feeling that shit, he's assigned to go in there and ask a couple of questions himself. But in his failed pursuit of chasing Sloan to stop him from going back in the past, he witnesses two things. For one thing, he witnesses his entire timeline changing, mainly due to, Sloan changing the past, but on top of that, he also witnesses Spider-Man dying. And from this point on, he tries to not only warn Peter about what's going to happen, while Peter is literally running towards the thing which is going to cause his death, while also trying to save Spider-Man just so he could save him, unlike that time he saw in that one time distortion. But of course, let me get back into the point of the video. So when you're playing as Peter throughout this game, a lot of the time when you bump into Anti-Venom, if there's one thing which is kind of clear, it's that he doesn't really want to fight you. He's more like a passive-aggressive type guy, Like, sure, he'll cause a couple of explosions, maybe weaken you a little bit, but I think it's pretty clear to say that he doesn't necessarily want to start a fight. But let me tell you, the moment that he does decide to start a fight and get all bulked up because of Sloan implanting some mind control chips in him, is the moment that this game goes from a Spider-Man game to a damn survival game. Now, the entire game has been building up to this moment, with Spider-Man going off against Anti-Venom in one heroic last stand. But while this fight does start off pretty heroic, with the player doing everything which they can, this fight takes a real quick turn. Because see, after after you do this quick thing to where you throw Anti-Venom through a wall and then pursue him just to make sure that he's really out for the counts, this guy ends up doing this thing to where he temporarily drains your powers and then starts fucking with you. So much to the point to where the only option you could do at that point is just pathetically crawl away as Peter starts contemplating everything that's going on. And in all honesty, it really shows about how vulnerable he is in this state, especially in the condition that he's in, which is being very weak and really having all the odds against him. But because this is a superhero game, Miguel manages to save Peter at the last minutes or at the last second, but also needs to go fight Anti-Venom because, as you guys know, Anti-Venom is built like a tank and that dude is not going down easily. So after a quick rematch, Anti-Venom quickly regains his own control of his mind and decides to go get his revenge, not only on Sloan, but with poor Doc Ock that was unfortunately at the wrong place at the wrong time. And in the events of that happening, he spawned something that was much more worse than himself. Now, these next few levels you bump into a pretty odd obstacle. As a tentacle that's covered in slime that kind of pops from out of nowhere and obscures the way or occasionally attacks you. And upon eventually returning back to your time, you end up coming across Atrocity, which in all honesty is a pretty underrated villain if we're going to be talking about Spider-Man specifically. Now, when it comes to Atrocity, there are so many things about this dude that just simply make him work. Rather if it be his kind of random introduction, which just kind of comes from out of nowhere from a series of unfortunate events, but when it also comes to just the way about how he's just executed in general. Like, sure, Anti-Venom was pretty scary when he started being Spider-Man's ass, but now that we have a type of upgraded version of him, now that he can travel through time and has Doc Ock's arm, and also with this brand new appearance, which is like a lot more scary than just base Anti-Venom, it just really says a lot. Especially whenever Spider-Man tries to make some type of barrier to try and get as far away from him, only for this thing to somehow make its way towards him in the quickest amount of time possible. Like when Spider-Man's suit looks like this after one encounter with this thing close and personal, that honestly says a lot, you know. So after a series of running away, we finally end up in the room where it all started and have our final showdown against Atrocity, finally putting down the very monster which literally has been tormenting us for the latter half of the game. And in all honesty, it's a pretty awesome boss fight, not only because of the general spectacle of everything that's just going on, but once again, as I mentioned earlier, finally taking down this monster which has been the main threat of the entire game, but just upgraded, you know. And that's all I really have to say, folks, and that was Spider-Man Edge of Time. I would go into other story details, but you know what? This video isn't really a review. It's just me talking about something that's somewhat horror-related that has been living rent-free in my head for the longest time now. But that's all. I'm LoneWolf360. I hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and yeah, enjoy the outro. Later, folks.